Okay, I'm going to look over the pairs in preparation for next week. There will be a lot of repetition in this video because some of them have been correcting and the overall idea in direction hasn't changed. And also the dollar has been very disappointing and I'm finding there's a lot of uncertainty with those pairs, which um, I would stay away from anyway. So, and at the end of the video, I'm going to update Deutsche Bank as I have a different view on the correction now, and I think it's really close to ending. So, starting with the dollar, the overall idea and the overall complex from many years ago looks like it still needs another high. The problem is that although the chart keeps inviting that to follow, it's not following. And so I don't have any evidence that it's not going to come in eventually, but I have a gut reaction that makes me want to turn away from this. So looking at what's in front of me, there's still a three-wave correction that the low was found pretty easily on this, but from there it hasn't impulsed up at all. So maybe some deeper correction will follow, and there's an engulfing type candle on the weekly, whereas some of the other dollar pairs have a more bullish look against the dollar. So in this, the recent low is the protective stop on any long move on this. I cannot really say anything more about it right now because I don't have a five-wave impulse from the recent low. It looks more like a three-wave move, unless you're going to try some type of creative count with a one into here, and then a three-wave move, which isn't something I can really guess about right now because it looks like an impulsive move down here. So the dollar has the chance to move higher, just hasn't done so yet. It hasn't really shown its hand in reversing either. So maybe it's putting in some type of like wedgie pattern where it gets choppy towards the end of a very long multi-year bullish advance. But I don't have any more clarity on it than that. So I'm going to stay away from that. And same with Euro US dollar. What I went over last weekend about watching out for the possible three-wave move that followed, like when there was five here, correction of three, and that copied over to this three sequence here with five, a tiny correction and another move down. The idea was that it could turn into a different type of a three-wave move with a different appearance, and that may be what follows here. But again, on the weekly, it's looking like it's put in some type of inverted hammer, so it could be basing for one more corrective swing up, and there is also a diagonal trend line there which may serve as resistance. The important point here overall, not to get confused by any details or actually lack of details on a downside move, the important point overall is that the upswing from January is just a corrective looking three-wave move. So even if it does swing higher, I don't think there's any bullish sign on this yet. And I like the ending diagonal, possible ending diagonal that I was talking about last weekend. So something like that may follow, but I would still say the downside on this is relatively limited. It's just that there is no upside setup whatsoever in this. And it is looking like it might be pointing higher, pointing down still. And this is more than enough as a corrective swing overall. So as I've said many times before, there are many better opportunities outside these popular dollar pairs right now. Cable looks like on the near term, on the short time frame on cable, it looks like this five-wave upswing from the low will have another gyration higher. There's no top put in for E, which is the first E of the triangle, which is the first of the bearish setups, staying beneath the C high. So overall, like in every other gyration here, it looks like it needs another swing higher because each sequence here has been in threes overall. And this looks like it needs one more high, just a poke above 126. And then that will be the first point of reversing lower. The old setup is way higher in that, but I'm not going to consider that until I see a violation of 127 even, basically. But because it has not impulsed from the March high, and that was only three waves as I went over many times there's no bearish sequence from here yet. So looking a touch higher and then a hard reversal in this pair. That's the preferred view. So E would come in over here. And the setup overall in this, whether it triangulates or whether it reaches a higher point for the secondary bearish view, the overall idea is a break of the October 2016 low beneath 118, basically. And the view in this hasn't changed either. The triangle is still within range. There's no bearish sequence here. I'm still viewing it as a three-wave move for D of the triangle, and I would really prefer to see another gyration up like this, and then another three down. We can find a D move, E, and down. That's still the preferred view. It's staying really choppy, like the other sequences here, and the key is the highlighted box of an impulse here. So everything that's followed from there has been in three, and if it can find a any type of corrective move beneath what I marked as C right now, I'll be looking for that to move lower. And New Zealand, US dollar, this has been very difficult. The idea was working very well into here, but then it ended petering out, and so far it looks like it's correcting higher for another X wave. This has been kind of fun to follow because it has this, what I would call a kind of fake bearish channel, bullish channeling look. But overall, based on the sequence here with that ending diagonal that worked very well into September 2016, it's pointing lower overall. It's just that it's doing so in a very choppy way. And if this does continue to work out and we find an X wave here, there will be a dramatic drop probably for Y. So the thing is about all these four popular dollar pairs, it's still looking like there is another move lower to come. And on the DX, there's no sign, there's no impulsive decline, so there's no real weakness following. It's just that the dollar bulls are not kind of stamping it down and marking it as a real drive upward. It's just that it looks like the dollar bullish trend will continue. I don't have any clear setups on that at the moment. In New Zealand dollar, I mean, since we didn't puke here, it's still looking like it'll be another three, like this type of swing here, basically, something like that. So no real great trades there. But moving on to Canadian dollar, it finally looks like there's some clarity coming back into Canadian dollar here, because it looks like the bearish sequence is not going to work, and it finally managed to find the X wave low. Instead of being here, move it here overall for a three-wave move in US Canadian. So the overall picture hasn't changed. The overall picture is that they're looking for another move higher for Z for wave 2, because this 1-2-1-2 count here failed, and I don't like the idea that this is the 5-wave impulse and there's been some crazy correction from that. The simpler idea to stick with is that this is moving up correctively. There's a 3-wave correction for X, and now we want to see a series of 3 waves too, above 136 into 138 or possibly higher, and that will end this very complex overall 3-wave move, which I'm marking as WXYXZ overall. So overall, I don't have a bullish setup on this because this was impulsive down, and another impulse should follow at some point. It's just that the strength in the Canadian dollar looks like it has not come in yet, and I'm glad because I've got all 4 Canadian dollar pairs lined up, and so they're all looking like they've got another gyration higher, particularly this one and now Aussie Canadian. So that hasn't changed. It's taken like 2 weeks for this to materialize, but overall just moving X from there to there, and it's looking like that idea, the main idea, is going to work out. As I've said before, essentially this area here between the recent December high and recent February lows is still a middle of nowhere move, and it's not the kind of place to initiate a new position. We either want to see a break of the low or a break of the high, and then there will be new moves to follow from that. And so far I like the higher and then lower idea. And there was a very sharp reversal on Aussie Canadian. I'm going to be quick with this because the bigger idea on the multi-year chart hasn't changed. I'm overall looking for this to end as a 3 and for a move higher for the B or X wave into the ending diagonal. So this is lining up very well for another move down, but this is a weekly chart, so we may see another 4 to 8 to 12 weeks higher maybe, and then I'll be looking for the move down. So it looks like it hasn't materialized. There's a very strong reversal on the weekly, and the idea before that this is a corrective wave looks like it's been confirmed. So same thing there. Pound Canadian, the count looks correct. It's a shame that I wasn't able to find some low into here after all the labeling and focus on it, but it works out that way sometimes. But the overall idea that there was a 5-wave move here ending and impulse up has worked out. Overall, it's corrective. So there's 3 into here, another correction. This is looking like it's channeling very much, and then another move higher in Pound Canadian before reversing as well. And Euro Canadian, again, just very quickly, I'm still looking at this to form some kind of leading diagonal. That's the preferred view. Just to kind of replicate the past leading diagonals here and the historic one, which was pre-Euro, but it's on the chart. Something like that to materialize. So for a bit higher in this above the March 2017 high. There's a bearish count on this. Of the 3 Canadian ones, this is the one that's looking like, of the 4 that I'm focusing on, this is the one that's looking like it has the better bearish chance actually, because there is a proper WXY count on this. But so far it's just managed to fall 3 but fall sharply. So again, like with the US dollar pairs, there's no great trade on this. The better trades are on the more exotic ones, really, unless you can find a trade into Aussie Canadian for a few hundred points higher. This is looking like it's put in a very strong reversal overall. So again, just to go over Aussie Canadian, everything's been in 3s here for the ending diagonal overall. And we've got it now 1, 2, 3. So we should see one more high towards 105, 106, and then the reversal to come, because everything's been choppy overall. So that's working well. It's just very time wasting, but there will be something really great out of that. Now I want to go over the pairs that actually have good trading opportunities coming and that I've been able to nail certain like trend following counts on. Euro New Zealand is without doubt one of the best ones to enter into. Everything's been working in line here. I'm not going to go over all the details. Please see last week's video if you want to go over that. But basically, it's still channeling. There was a 3-wave correction that managed to catch on to there. And so far, I'm just looking for a correction into that boxed area here around 150, 151. And then a move higher overall. The deeper the better, because it links up really well with Euro Australian dollar. The head and shoulders pattern here worked out very well, and if I can find, this is trending down anyway. There's no change in this. From finding the high here, there's no change down. The thing is that it's managed to put in 5 waves now. So if this extends visibly, that's okay. I'm still viewing now this part as the 5th part of an impulse, and then we'll see some corrective sequence overall, a bit higher, and then another move down. So this is trending down. If you short this, I would hold it. The view hasn't changed. I'm looking for one more low to here into 135, 134 beneath the February low. And this is trailing Euro New Zealand by about 2 or 3 weeks. So I would look for this to bottom after there is already a bullish marking on Euro New Zealand that has a print. And so that's the better one to work with. And this is more of a forecast. And as I've been over before, on a new low, there will be weekly divergence returning, which matches actually the thing I was showing about US dollar yen. So that is going to, I think, become a very good trade. Just one more thing to say about Euro New Zealand. Like with the Dutch elections, the price ended up moving. This entire 1, 2, 3 part of the 5-wave impulse moved before the Dutch elections. So we may see a bottom come in here a week or two before the French elections, which I think are towards the beginning of May. So something will materialize here for a move. But if this is a wave two, overall the idea is that a 50% correction is the minimum really on this type of move. The deeper the better. And if I'm expecting Euro Australian to fall, we'll probably see a deeper correction in this, which will be great. No new low in this pair. The chance of a new low, based on what I have working now and the view, is very, very low. Yeah, it's very unlikely. Okay, the other New Zealand pairs, Aussie New Zealand, I'm still trying to find a low in this. Everything so far has been working well, aside from one readjustment where seeing the fifth wave extend. But without going over the long-term chart, I am looking higher in this pair. What typically happens is that if the fifth wave extends, retracement will often cover most of that extension. So any move back toward 106.70, 106.50 is still bullish. And as I mentioned on the monthly chart, there's the excellent 8 EMA around that level. So if there's a deep, sharp correction, what actually tends to happen in these charts is that larger moves will often replicate smaller moves that appeared before. Like the first impulse that came back in February had one of these very sharp three-wave corrections for wave two of that larger impulse. And we could see something like that here materialize overall. One, not that deep, but towards here, one, and then a sharp reversal, which happened right here. So any type of move down, overall it's still corrective. This hasn't changed. This move up, I think I mentioned in the last video, is 3 so far, and it's reversing from that. So lower in this pair. I don't have a target as such, but basically back to the near the origin of the fifth wave extension, 106.70 area for the 8 EMA, and it remains bullish anywhere into there. This is another pair where I don't expect to see the low broken. And Pound New Zealand may have put in a important high here for wave 4 of the bigger count, going back to 2015. So it looks like it did end up busting the triangle and moving above the December 2016 high. So that's enough for a large three-wave correction over into here. And on the lower time frame, it looks like it's impulse down in 5 into here. So we have a 5-wave impulse and a very shallow kind of sideways three-wave correction here. Now, the ideal situation is that it finds a low above here and reverses higher, preferably in a sharp move, but any type of further correction towards 179, 180, anywhere beneath the last high last week, and reverses down, and that would be a good initiation point in my view, because the last high, because we've got a 5-wave impulse, should hold and would make a good stop level there. So that's one to watch this week for a new trade, because the overall idea is beneath the November 2016 high. Euro pound, there's been no change. It's been going sideways since December. What I want to say about this is that in the head and shoulders video I mentioned, Euro Australian dollar has worked out, and that was thought to be corrective. I'm still maintaining the view that this should move higher. It's more likely to move higher than it is lower still, despite the obvious pattern on the weekly chart, because it's followed a series of impulses, and despite the trend line break, I'm not viewing that as a significant issue here. If you can find a low, the significant issue on the local chart is that the 22 February low should hold, because if this is wave 1 of wave 3, and this is just a very steep correction for wave 2 of wave 3, it should hold this low right here. So that for me is a breaking point. That would actually violate my entire bullish count on here. So I at least have a local violation point for this, for a bullish view. I can't really offer more than that, aside from repeating last week that this is not, well, last week's position was not the time to initiate a new order. This may have a better chance because you have a clear violation point on the labeling I have. But there's still better charts out there right now. It would be better to see some evidence that it's reversing, because right now it is pointing lower. It's just I don't have a clear break on it to see some evidence of a reversal. Even a move above 0.87 would work very well as a good sign. And then if that does follow, ultimately a move above the October high would be followed. And someone asked about US dollar yen. I don't have a clear view on this now. This is not one of the ones that I would want to initiate anything on just here, because there has not been any proof that it's found a low, and like in the long video I mentioned, you have to be rather creative in forcing a count of 5 waves in this sequence. Overall, it does have a bullish look in a long-term chart, but the issue is with the yen pairs, I'm only looking at 2 of the 3 in the list, but euro-yen looks without doubt that it's going to make another new low, followed with divergence following, and then there may be a bullish reversal from that off of this swing. I don't have a count on this. I'm just glancing at it now and then, but the issue on US dollar yen is I don't see a long entry now, and it's had a very forceful reversal from that hanging man last week. What I want to say about the channel that someone mentioned, there's no proof that this is a channel yet, because just because there's 2 repeated connecting points that you can connect here doesn't really mean anything as such without a third base. So there would need to be some kind of like proof that it's going to find a low. We're also in the middle of nowhere in terms of the fib levels. So I don't have a better view on this. What I would say is that from the recent 3-wave correction, it's looking like it's in a third wave, so maybe a bit lower, at least before a bounce towards 106 even, or 106.80 or so. So I think this weekly video hasn't really given any new information, actually. The only thing I would say is that the best pairs to look for are these Euro down-under pairs, and to watch out for a strong move up in Aussie Canadian and Pound New Zealand as having a topped out pattern for reversal. Okay, just to look at a few other things very quickly. Bitcoin's been working out as one of the better views from 900. I can put a count on here that it's managed to find 5 waves for wave 1 of wave 5 overall, some type of 3-wave correction to follow, and if that can hold the last low, maybe towards 1100 or 1050, then a strong move up for wave 3. I still don't think it's topped out, and I like the idea of a move above the March high overall. There's no sign that it's topping out just here. It still looks like, from the recent high, it looks like it's been corrective as well. So I'm going to maintain that view that it's still bullish now. There's no type of mania on Bitcoin, which it'll get back into like mainstream news if it reaches towards that 2000 level as well. But looking at the chart, it still looks bullish. So stick with what's been working since 2015, and that hasn't changed since last week. And gold is right at resistance point, but it's looking like it's going to power through. There's no change on this either. There was a lot of uncertainty in the last video about what it was going to do because I had 2 split counts. The only unsplit certain count overall is that this 5-wave impulse overall, followed by a 3-wave correction, is more than enough for a bullish sequence. And I'm just going to repeat the same thing I said before, is that if you're holding long in this, you should continue to hold long, because it's put in a major low back in December 2015, in my opinion. Okay, and last thing I want to look at is Deutsche Bank, because I was reminded of the corrective pattern on gold, just to show this really briefly. Charts. Okay, this was an easy one to read because it started as 3. And then it followed with that steep 5-wave C pattern. But overall, if you look at it, it's just A, B, and C. Very steep and dramatic at the end, but it's corrective overall. Um, Deutsche Bank is doing that same kind, it has that same kind of look on the daily. There's a 5 wave impulse into here from about 12, $11 up to 21. But so far the corrective sequence looks like A, B, and 5. And I was looking for it to terminate up here where I had a mark before, but it's extending. And what I would say here is that it's the type of situation to buy into, similar to how gold was, because there's no reason to assume that just because it looks like it's come down in one swing here, there's going to follow some other type of correction and a deeper move. That's the assumption usually, and that does work in a majority of cases. But as you can see in gold, there's been an A, B at the start, and I'm looking at this as 5 overall. So if we can find a low into under 15 next week, or maybe even a bit more of a dramatic decline to 14 and change lower, it's a type of move to get into, I think, to hold on to see it high above 21 in the next, later this summer and later this year. And it may just be a corrective up move, but there's no reason to assume that now because it's putting in a type of 3 on the chart of A, B, and 5, in my view. So the violation point in this is obviously the last low at 11.20, 11.18. Okay, I'll leave it there. It's not the best update, but it works in that most of the trends I've been following are still intact, and at least there's some clarity now on the Canadian dollar. And the ones to watch out for in finding lows remain the euro pairs and new positions maybe in pound New Zealand and Deutsche Bank possibly. Okay, have a good week. Bye-bye.